All right. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Phenomenal Student Podcast. On today's episode, I'm not going to go through the whole spiel about, we're going to have experts and all of this. On today's episode, I interviewed Carol Dixon Hall yesterday about her career yesterday. But today, I kind of wanted to shift the focus in. Instead of talking about a lot of pedagogical stuff, I kind of wanted to get into me being a Black male. I thought the best thing I could start with is starting by why there are so few of us, meaning Black males, in education. And to help me kind of facilitate this discussion and have a nuanced and complex discussion about this, even though it can sometimes be broken down to simple terms. First, to my left, you have Mr. Reece, or Kris Reece. He's now an elementary administrator. He was someone I worked with personally when I worked at a behavior school as a paraprofessional. He was a teacher then he became a behavior specialist. And now he just recently got a promotion as an assistant principal at, I guess I forgot the name of the school. What's the name
Dixie
of the school?
Elementary. Dixie Elementary in Tyler, Texas. Yeah.
So are y'all the Rebels?
No, we're the Dragons.
Had to make picture a little
It's
bit.
funny you said that because our high school just changed their name. It was
Yes.
Robert E. Lee. Now they're getting ready to change.
And yes, guys, I guess they knew
better name.
Yeah, my high school, or my school, just did the same thing back in Mississippi. It's a funny story. One of my friends, he's actually stationed here in Texas, ironically at Fort Hood, and I don't know if I should do that to him, but Fort Hood. But like he told me when he first went to basic training, he put up his middle school photo to show you how jacked up our school is. He put his middle school photo up and they had the Confederate signal. And he almost literally got in trouble for it because they thought he was trying to do some, I guess, I don't know. So he almost literally got in trouble for it and he had to take it down. He didn't realize a Confederate was a bad thing. I mean, I never thought a whole lot of it at the time because you were just a kid. So just funny story about that. All right, guys. So to my right, I have Khaleel Lott. He's an elementary 4th grade math teacher and talented guy. I'm telling you, like I had a chance to work with him, and I think my 3rd year, my students called me the motivational maestro because I played music and I did all of that, and I'm very motivational. But a lot of the techniques I learned was from having a chance to watch him the latter part of my 2nd year. So I'm very thankful to him for that. So of course, I want people to get a chance to just hear his perspective. But Khaleel, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. It's rainy out here, but it's fun to be with all these educated Black men talking about real life situations. So it's an honor to be here.
And thank you for joining. We're trying to avoid these storms. 2020 has not been kind to us. All right, at the bottom, I have Ray Gibson. He's a former middle school administrator. I actually taught his grandson this year, so we had a chance to talk shop a lot throughout the school year. So he gave me a lot of good advice. This is somebody who has a little skin in the game. So, Mr. Gibson, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. I'm honored to be here with these other brothers to discuss shop.
Yes. All right. And I have Aaron Bailey. I'm trying to make sure I didn't have it mistaken. You're a biology teacher, right? Or is it you teach another science?
I'm an instructional specialist now.
Oh, that's pretty quick. I remember you were only in about your 3rd or 4th year when I talked to you. So that's what's up. So is that a new promotion or was that going into this year?
That's actually going into this year. Last year I was a teacher specialist with our science department at North Forest High School, but this year I'll be an instructional specialist, kind of helping out with instruction and also some admin work. So just excited to look forward to this year. So just for people to show how talented you are, how many years have you been teaching now? This will be my 6th year. 6th year.
So guys, listening today, you got a lot of talented young brothers. I'm going into my 5th year as well as I've taught mostly self-contained throughout my career, but I love teaching reading. So that's kind of my specialty. I love doing that. So let's kind of get to it, guys. So our first topic, and I should have made it I forgot to add it as the little topic on our theme. So the question is, how old were you when you had your first Black male teacher? So I'll go to Mr. Gibson first. When did you have your first Black male teacher?
When I was 12 years old, in the 7th grade.
So do you have a lot of?
Go ahead.
Do you have a lot of recollections of him as far as work? I'm not working, but learning from that teacher.
Yeah, well, of course, that particular teacher happened to have been a coach too. So with a lot of that, there was discipline, and it was more, and during that time, we're talking about with me, and I'm giving away my age. This was the late 60s, early 70s. So the Coach Wallace had that. There was a lot of bark. There could be some bite, but you sort of told the line with him, and and with that, we weren't. It wasn't like it was so stern or and that kind of thing, but because he was playful, he had that side of him where he liked to laugh a lot. But when he was about business, you knew it, and you knew not to cross the line.
All right, so we'll go to Aaron, the youngest person I guess here in this crew. So when's the first time you had a black male teacher?
Well, I have a question. Does substitute teachers actually count? Because I would say I think it was 7th grade, I had a black male substitute teacher, but I didn't have a black male teacher or / professor until I got to college. And It wasn't until I went to Prairie View A&M University, which I love. They produce productive people.
Let's go.
Let's go. TV in the house, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it wasn't until then that I really had black male teachers actually impact my life. Actually show me like, this is how, black men, they teach, they're educated, they're brilliant. They have the pedagogy knowledge. They have knowledge about the content. They're not just disciplinarians, but they're those who are able to teach the content and teach it to a proficient level. So and so that's black male teachers is hard for me because I just really never had one until college.
There's a little bit. I seem like a little bit of like feedback there. Just I don't know what was going on there. Just
On me?
Yeah, there's a little bit of feedback.
Breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, but it's okay. We'll figure that out. All right. So, and we all kind of talked before the show, so I kind of have a good idea of what. So Mr. Lott, when's the first time you had a male teacher? It's coming from me.
Your voice is deep and distorted.
Is it coming across the number?
It's
It's
still
a little
rather
bit
distorted.
computerized.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
You hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
It's
A little better.
It's kind of distorted still.
It's just probably all the storms and stuff like that, all the weather.
It could be.
Yes. So let's start. So we'll do this. What I'll do is, so Mr. Lott, you go ahead and answer, and then Kris, you go ahead and answer, and then what I'm gonna leave and come back in.
Okay.
All right.
So my first black teacher, black male teacher, was in college at Ouachita Baptist University. His name was Isaac Mawase. He was an African gentleman. He taught philosophy, and I mean, I would have to say it was just like seeing a dragon for the first time or something. It was just something mystical because I had never seen a black male in like education ever, and he was so knowledgeable. We were talking about deep philosophical life questions that were unanswerable, and he just moved through it so fluidly, so adequately, and it was very inspiring. Outside of probably, I don't think I even had a coach, to be honest. I don't think I even had coaches that were black when I was growing up, which is crazy. All my coaches were white men. So it was just something that I just didn't even know existed. So.
Okay, well, I'm kind of like Mr. Bailey and Mr. Lott. I didn't have a black male teacher until I went to junior college. I went to TJC, and his name was Reverend Maz. Now, it's funny because I knew him in the community as a preacher and a pastor, but when I didn't realize he taught until I got to TJC and I took a history class. And I was like, oh, that's Reverend Maz. So he was my first experience as a teacher. Very, very intelligent man. I can remember one of the most prolific lessons he kind of taught me about in history as far as, I guess, population is urban sprawl. And he used Houston as an example. And from that, I've always remembered his lessons in history. And I'm not a history buff, but he made it interesting. So that was really my first experience with the black male teacher. And no, I had another one in the engineering program at Prairie View. But other than that, I didn't have very much experience with black male teachers. Yeah. Now I did have some black women, but just not black men.
Right. And Jeremiah, may I add just a little bit more to this discussion?
I think you probably so. He had to. I think he logged out. He's trying to log back
Okay.
in.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things, you see, I ended up going to 6 years of segregated schools, 6 years of integrated schools. Therefore, in the community as a whole, many of the preachers that I knew in the area who were educated were, they were teachers too. And many times even if you did not have them in the classroom per se, you knew that they were there. And my first 6 years, I had 6 black women, and beginning in the 7th grade, I had Coach Wallace, and I knew I was gonna have him once I got to that level, because he was there even with my older brother. So, and then there was a black principal who lived maybe 2 or 3 doors down from me in my neighborhood. His oldest son was one of my best friends. So it was my experience was that you ran across and you knew and perhaps were related to the black male teachers. I had a first cousin who taught 5th grade and in the elementary school that I went to, and he was a black male. So historically, from my perspective, that wasn't, it wasn't a, you kind of, looking back on it now, you kind of took it for granted. They were there. We knew that they were there.
So I have a question. So how did you all view them? Because I know sometimes we may have a different view now to maybe how you viewed them back when you had male black teachers.
During that time, they were they were admired. Most were. They were held up as role models, and they were in most of the black community. I can't say all, but most were. This is what you want to at least aspire to be, if not beyond.
Makes sense.
All right. So I guess it seems like my speaker must have went out or something like that. That's why I was doing all that extra stuff. So I guess the second topic is one speaking more to our own personal experience. It's kind of a little different because I'm looking on the phone, so I can't see everybody. But at the same time, the question is, when is the first time you realized that you were a black male teacher? Now, I speak from my own personal experience. It seems like it happened from the first day. I can still remember I was working this aftercare program, like kind of almost like a daycare program. My first time working with kids, essentially, shortly before I began work at the Carlton Center as a parent. I remember the first day a lady came up to me toward the end. I think I was having a rough time first day. She's like, "You don't know anything, do you?" I was like, "Whoa." I was like, "Man, that's pretty person on their first day. I don't know if that's the type of thing you want to tell them." But I was like, "Man, this stuff is really real." And I just have seen just throughout my time as an African-American teacher, I felt like people just come at you a little harder. I mean, I've seen people just criticize you just because they can, and not because it makes sense at all. So, but I would say my first moment realizing that I was a black male teacher was from the first day. But, I've kept pushing after that. But at the same time, we're like, man, these people really feel really, really bold. So, all right. So I'll go to you first, Kris. When is the first time you realized that, hey, I'm a black male teacher? Now, I can't be positive too, but.
Well, mine isn't positive. And it didn't necessarily happen when I had become an actual teacher. I was still a paraprofessional. And at the
Mm-hmm.
time, I was working in a different district and I was working in a K through second life skills class. Now, mind you, these are all little kids, and I'm 6'2", 300 plus pounds. Um, there was this one white sub who I thought was okay until I learned of her comments. Um, I learned that not only she had complained to my principal, but she had complained to the teacher next door to our classroom. And she said, "What is that big black dude been there doing with those little special ed kids?" And
Wow.
she didn't
Wow.
realize that I was really close to the teacher next door because at the time I was really getting into, hey, I think I want to do this. Now, mind you, I didn't go to school for education. My original degree is electrical engineering, but I got into education off of an accident. But what she didn't understand is, at the time I was trying to figure out, what's the best route for me to get certified and all that. And the teacher let me know. She was like, you may want to watch your back with this lady because she came to me and said, well, I just went and talked to the principal. Well, but I don't understand why is that big old black man in there with those little kids. So at that point, I realized I was like, I understand that my presence and who I am and the color of my skin intimidates people. And inadvertently from that point on, I kind of started to, and I don't anymore, but I started to kind of cower myself almost to the point where I didn't want people to feel nervous around me. I didn't want people to feel any type of way that any negative way or any me having any kind of malcontent towards kids, especially special needs. So yeah,
Now,
that was a huge shocker, man. That still sits with me, man. I still think about that.
Yeah, yeah.
now that's actually going. I actually was going to ask another question next. After we all kind of discussed it, but I think I know where to go next. So, Aaron, when was the first time you realized, like, hey, I'm a black male teacher?
I think I had two experiences. I think my first one was I was about to start coaching, but I was also teaching. I was teaching biology at North Forest High School my first year, and so it was a group of us. They were like, "Hey, come here afterwards." I was like, "Okay, cool." I'm going to just trying to hang out with teachers and things like that. And it was just really all black teachers. Most of them were male, and I just remember us males. We went somewhere, we were doing something, and he was like, "Hey, you don't just teach for yourself, but you teach for people coming behind you." And that really kind of stuck with me because I've heard that before, right? You hear that from a lot of African-American parents, a lot of black parents, they kind of tell you that. But when you hear that from an educational perspective, and especially from a black male perspective, I was kind of thrown back because this is 2015. I'm like, aren't we ahead? Aren't we in this century at this time that it really doesn't really matter? But I was like, okay, it really does matter. But I also had an experience going to a professional development my first year. Just like Mr. Reece said, I am a biology major, minor in chemistry. So teaching was not my forte, and I really didn't know a lot about teaching practices. However, when it came to the content of science and of biology, I pretty much knew that. So I went to this professional development. It was about it was about science and how to use that and how to perfect it and how to use that in a classroom for high school students. Went there. I was the only black male there. And when I felt like they didn't think I had the proficient knowledge of science, that I didn't know how to teach, even though I had some teaching experience on the college level. I just didn't know. I may have not known how to had different practices like four corners, turning talks. I didn't know that because that wasn't the lingo that you use in a university setting. But inside of a high school, that's the kind of jargon that you use. But what I felt was, they didn't feel like I knew the content, I could be a great teacher, or that I was even good enough to even be there. It's like, why were you there? So that was kind of my first experience. The first one was kind of positive, but the second one was very negative. It was, it just made me, for me, it made me say, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to show you that I can be proficient in this area, and especially inside of instruction where you don't see a lot of black males. So that was my driving force, because I didn't want to be seen as just one thing. I'm only good and proficient in this area. I want to be great in different areas as a teacher.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think it's give people kind of a, because that's something I kind of want to get to the heart of, is kind of talking about, like, when it comes from a pedagogical standpoint. We kind of was having some conversations before the show, and this is so weird talking on the phone. But you know, a lot of people probably just don't understand that. Just people just don't view it. I mean, it kind of spans so many things when you're talking about the black quarterback, or for a while, I remember it was a time when they thought that for some reason you couldn't have an all black team starting in basketball, but you know, that's kind of hilarious now at this point. But there was a time people don't understand that. So I'm gonna go to Mr. Lott next, then I end with Mr. Gibson. Mr. Lott, when is the first time you realized I'm a black male teacher? Like, it just hit you?
All right. My first experience is when I went to to get an alt certification in the teaching program, Texas Teachers. And I remember getting my first teaching job. You know, your first teaching job, you have to, you know, prove that you're proficient, you can handle a classroom, you know, the content and things like that. And I had a mentor. And as I watched, you know, from each school, you know, when you're in the school, you're assigned a mentor teacher, right? And so, like, there was 3 or 4 other brand new teachers, and they were not of color. They were like, you know, young white ladies, white men, whatever. And I remember seeing them receive so much more help than what I was getting. And I couldn't, at first, I just couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, why are they getting so much? Like, I mean, they were getting PDs and, you know, all these extra handouts, everything. And then when it came to me, it was like, you're good, pretty much. And I was like, why am I not getting any help here? And I was like, what's going on? And, you know, I didn't realize until I stepped back, walked out of my classroom, and I looked on the entire floor, and I was the only black male. I looked in the entire school, and I was like, I'm the only black male here. You know, so, like, it didn't really click. I mean, I was just thinking I want to teach and work with kids, and it didn't really, you know, I mean, obviously I knew I was a black male going into it, but I didn't realize until the treatment that was unfair to some extent. I didn't really hold a grudge or anything. I just kind of just powered through and figured I'm going to handle this. But it really hit me that something's not even here on the playing field. Something's not right. And then I kind of, like Mr. Reece said, there was always that kind of, like, you had to, you know, oh, you're so loud or you're so strong. And you almost feel like you have to cower away from being your culture, right? But then whenever it came to a serious situation, it was like, you handle it, you know? So it was definitely unfair treatment on that side that kind of made me realize, okay, there's something different here. So that was my first real experience.
Yeah, I even can think about just kind of relate to what you're saying. It's like my second year, I kind of got like that. I remember I got to the point where I was kind of tough my first year. So I'm like, hey, I'm gonna calm down. But then you realize that don't really work. You start being less than yourself. That ain't always gonna be the best approach. The kids know when you're kind of being less than, because it's kind of a confidence thing. So that's always very tough to deal with. So Mr. Gibson, you have a lot more experience than the rest of us, and you've probably seen it all. So when was the first time you realized, I don't want to age you a little bit, but
that's okay. Time has done that.
When is the first time you realized, hey, I'm a black male teacher?
Well, my experience was in small town Louisiana. I actually was a real life version of Welcome Back, Kotter. That same middle school that I went to is where I taught. That coach that I had was by that time was assistant principal, and there was a white principal there. Well, you know, in a small town like that, maybe about 5,000 people, everybody knows everybody. And I ended up having the president of the First National Bank in his son in my classroom. Well, this young man was, you know, when school started, he wasn't ready. He played around. He did everything except get started with school. So by the time we got to the middle of the grading period, this young man who's white, you know, he had a D average. And when I sent the information home, you know, the report to his parents, his father calls up to talk to the principal, you know, and said, well, my son has a D average, and I need to know what's this about? Who's this guy? You know, kind of thing. Well, the principal got a little nervous about it. He calls me and tells me that well, he's coming in and he wants to know what's going on. And I had all of my documentation in place, and said, okay, well, when are we gonna meet him? And well, he's coming in, and he's trying to prepare me. This guy's gonna come in trying to, they're trying to browbeat you because he's a pillar in this society. I guess, I don't know. Well, guy came in, and he actually happened to have been a former educator before he went into banking. And when we got to talking, I told him about his son's conduct. It wasn't out of control. He was just a seventh grade kid. This is August going into September, and school hadn't started yet. Kind of thing. Had his the work that he had turned into me. Some of it was either very poorly done or incomplete. And because this bank president had a little knowledge of pedagogy, when in talking to him, and he quizzed me, and when he realized that I was solid on pedagogy, I knew what I was talking about, he backed away. And as a matter of fact, at that point, all of his folks in the Rotary Club, Lions Club, whatever, it became a part where this guy knows what he's doing. You may want to put your kids in his classroom. But initially, it was that's when I kind of realized, yeah, even though I'm at the moment in my hometown, it's like, well, this guy is a black guy that went to a black school. I got my master's from PV, fellas, but I'm a grammar knight.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll let you make it.
I know you will. But that was all that wrapped into one. You're a black guy from predominantly from an HBCU. So what could you possibly know? And I'm gonna quiz you on what I think you should know. And it's like, wow, he actually told me some stuff I didn't know. That kind of thing. So that's when I I was kind of put there on that spot that here's this black guy. Up until that point, I'm a teacher, but then it's like, yeah, I'm a black teacher, black male teacher at that.
And kind of the reason I want to kind of add that question because I'm trying not to do the whole research studies. I've been doing way too much of it this summer, but even previously I read research where it talked about kids just seeing a black male teacher increases their chances of going to college, especially black males, by like up to 50%, maybe even more. Just seeing one of us in 3 through 5, because a lot of y'all spoke about you didn't get one into high school, not high school, but college. I think some 7th grade, and I think with me, I think I didn't have anybody into maybe I guess you would say 6th, our PE teacher, but someone that actually taught me reading, writing, arithmetic. I didn't get one of those until 8th grade, so I never really had that true experience of that myself. Just somebody in elementary teaching me how to read or how to sound out a word. I never had that. I don't think people understand the power in that, and they actually have research that suggests even male teachers actually do a better job sometimes of those things because kids relate to it a little differently. So it's incredibly impactful, but you have so few of us. I mean, as yourself, Mr. Reece, you're going to be an elementary assistant principal, but obviously you worked at a behavior school. Aaron or Mr. Bailey, you work at a high school, and then Mr. Lott, both me and him working in elementary. Like, we're a rare breed. And then even still, you're definitely not going to find one on the same team. But me and Mr. Lott, even at the school we worked together, we were split. So you're going to be split there. They're never going to let you be on the same team together. So that kind of, that's going to lead to the question after the next one. The next question, I was going to ask it as the 4th question, but I think it kind of fits what Mr. Reece is talking about, saying how maybe we sometimes have to cower ourselves. And I'm gonna try to say this question the right way because I know how some people are gonna take it. Maybe that's what I really mean. But do y'all guys think, and I'll go to Mr. Gibson first on this question, do you think there's a preference given to the bubbly, and sometimes male teacher, but the bubbly kind of more demure, or I won't say soft speaking. I'm trying to say this the right way, because I know some people listening probably already know where I'm going with this, but giving more preference to more of that bubbly, softer black male teacher, Mr. Gibson.
That's hard. That's a hard question to answer. I think that in some instances, yes, because the black male teacher that's a bit more stern, perhaps a bit more business-like, is taken. It's viewed upon as he's taking himself too seriously. My problem with that, and of course I ran into that in the latter part of my career, where we're gonna do dress up day, and we're gonna be we're gonna be Superman, Spider-Man, or Iron Man, or that kind of thing. And I guess it's more or less it was from my perspective. As an administrator, most times my interaction with parents, as they're coming up there, if they're upset about something, either a decision I made or something that happened at school, and I just, from my perspective, in my head, seeing coming around, coming into the commons area to greet a parent, and I'm dressed like Superman. I don't think I'm going to be taken very seriously to begin with, So at that point, I kind of, it was kind of like, well, loosen up, have some fun. I get that, but from my perspective, and from being in my experience as far as education is, being an educator is concerned, and having been educated, 6 years all black school, 6 years integrated school, I just felt that being in education, I've got to my appearance and my demeanor is everything. I just could not bring myself to and I'm exaggerating a bit, but I'm not coming to school in a cat suit and I'm trying to talk to a parent about their kids' discipline issues. It just won't. It really won't fly with folks looking at me, black parent or white parent.
Now I can see a funny parent being like, if you dressed up like Batman, they're like, "Hey, where's Robin?"
Yeah.
I know I would.
But at the same time, they're coming. You see, there goes look at that, what affirmative action's done for us, kind of thing. So that's the way I looked at it.
All right, so Aaron, you may look at it a little different because you teach high school. In elementary, you're gonna have a lot more of them dress up days and people trying to be silly. So how do you look at it from your standpoint of, like, maybe they give, and I don't want to even say giving preference to the bubbly teacher, but they won't say even black male teachers to be a bit more soft spoken and a bit more.
You want to say like feminine? Is that what you're trying to say? More feminine?
I don't want to say that.
I'm not saying it like I'm not saying. I'm saying, is that what you're trying to describe?
Yes, somewhat.
Okay.
Give me in trouble. All right.
I'm not trying to get you in trouble. I'm not trying to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
If you want to say, I'm just trying to understand. Like
I'm trying to say it the right way because you have that crowd, so I'm just trying to be smart about that. So they just say they want us to be a bit more soft spoken. I'll use that word. Then Aaron, so do you think they want us to be a bit more soft spoken and a bit more seen but not heard?
Yeah, I think. Well, I do agree to a certain degree that they do want us to be like that. But I think the thing that we're not, I think there's a sense of urgency as a black male teacher to actually not just like speak the part, look the part, and to do what we need to do, because we know that it's important to educate black men. It's important to educate black women, and it's important to allow them to see us and to say, okay, we may not look like LeBron James, we don't look like Jay-Z, we don't look like this, but we're a professional who has a professional degree, and this is what it looks like when you're a professional and you go to a professional job. So especially from the high school level, because I see it as a transition from, we're going from 8th grade to 9th grade, and I've had a lot of 9th graders, but I've also taught seniors. We're getting ready to put you into the real world. And so I don't want to give you a false look of what the real world is. This as a Black male, I mean, just like someone told me, you have to be 2 or 10 times as better than the next person.
Mm-hmm.
Truth. And so because of that, that's why I dress up. That's why I even dressed up today, because I recognize that if I don't do those things, they're going to feel as though this is the standard and this is what I should do. I teach at a predominantly, I would say 60-40 African-American Hispanic school. And so it's important to show them what a Black male, and even, I would just say what a Black male is supposed to look like and how we're supposed to do, and supposed to be an educator. And just to answer the question, I do believe some preference is given to those type of teachers. I've had a teacher who was a little bit more just not as, I wouldn't say just different from me. And because they were a little different from me, they literally gave him privilege and gave him more tools to work with. I walked into a meeting, it was him and a couple people giving him tools. And I was like, y'all not gonna give me the same tools? Like, what's going on? And I was upset, and they knew I was upset, but I was like, are you trying to set me up to fail? Like, what's going on? Because during that year, I actually had 9th graders. I had 12th graders. And during the middle of the year, I think it was around Thanksgiving, they gave me 9th graders as a first year teacher. And so not with a lot of help, not with a lot of transition help, because you recognize you're pretty much almost through the first semester. So kids get used to how a classroom, how a teacher works. So by the time that all happens, I have 9th graders. I'm trying to transition into get them into the fold of how my classroom works, what we're going to do. And, with that, this is an EOC class. So I actually had to, it was very difficult to actually see that. But I think they do get sometimes a little bit more preferential treatment because they're not intimidated by them. They don't see and I feel like sometimes they see as a threat and intimidated by, like, we know our stuff and we're here.
Oh, trust me, I've heard that one a time or two. But you kind of hit on something key too, as far as how you dress. I even learned it from reading from Ron Clark. He kind of talked about like how teachers should dress well, but even as Black men, I think it's important. I ain't gonna lie, it's kind of cool when a kid. I think I worked at 2 distinct type of schools. Working in a more urban school, and the kid's like, "Man, yeah, Mr. Short, he always dressed." I'm like, "Yep, sure is." And then another student like, "Man, Mr. Short, why you always so fancy?" And you want to be like, "Look, I gotta be this way." Like, you know what I'm saying? You want to tell them the real, but they don't understand. Like, you have to be that person. Sorry, Mr. Lott. You're pretty chill. I work with Mr. Lott. You're a pretty chill cat. Pretty laid back, but he has a serious side to him in that sense as a teacher. So, Mr. Lott, do you feel like at times they give preference to the teacher that's a bit more soft-spoken?
Yeah, and I'm gonna say soft-spoken, but I'm also gonna say like the word effeminate. But I'm also gonna say that there's nothing wrong with that. Like that is okay for someone to be that way. But I feel like if you choose not to go down that path, like Mr. Aaron said, and be different, you're met with a lot more hostility, and you're met with a lot more firmness and a lot less resources. And so I definitely would agree that has been the case many times, that when you come into that scenario, and if I can't remember your name with the glasses, sir. Tell me one more time.
Gibson.
Mr. Gibson. When he said, he doesn't want to dress up in costumes and wants to be taken seriously, wants to put forth that I am a pillar of the community and I would like to instill knowledge into this community and be respected as such, that is quickly shot down. And I think that just kind of comes from the culture of like America in some ways, that they don't want to see an African-American man be a man. And I don't know how to say that in another way.
I think I don't know how to say
and I don't think that's like, I don't know that that's wrong, but I mean, we have this desire to be seen equal on all platforms. And I definitely see that in the school setting. And I don't know that it's necessarily more racial driven, but I think it's just that we work in a very female dominated industry, and sometimes that can get caught, that can be misconstrued. You have a female who has authority over you, and as African American men, we're always met with like the most extreme aggression towards any directive, right? So like instead of saying, hey, I would like for you to do this, it's like, I'm going to kick open Jeremiah's door and start screaming at him and let him know that I'm the boss, right? But then when you go to that different teacher, like you said, it may be that different teacher, they might just say, hey, could you do this? And then all of a sudden he has these different titles and hats and he's been given all this and he's talked to sweet and nice. But when it comes to you, they're going to come with this, I have to break him in order to get him to respond correctly. And I think that's more where I feel like we've had that experience, Jeremiah, is that we both had a strong desire to educate kids, get scores, be successful. But because we come in with that determination, the desire to win, that courage, that fire, it is they quickly try to quell that and extinguish it with extreme prejudice. And I hate to say that word as well, but that is the way that it's taken.
And I think that what ends up happening too, it's a societal thing, because many times with a lot of social media and platforms, you end up with caricatures of black men, you know, where we're in any given circumstance that we're viewed, in some instances, we're really not taken seriously.
And I mean, you said a mouthful with that. And I think as black males, that's what you want to be taken seriously. So you have to go be above and beyond, be strong. Because I honestly can say, you know, obviously all the men on this panel were great teachers or phenomenal teachers. But I can't think of too many black males that weren't good teachers. Because are you even allowed? I mean, even when you're the best of the best, trust me, I've dealt with it personally myself. When you're the best of the best are really good, sometimes you are met with resistance and kind of speak me enough,
right? It's still not good enough. It's still I mean, we are always the best of the best, but it's never truly good enough. And I think that's a fault on the society, and we have to really understand in ourselves. Like, I know I'm going on a tangent, that we have to not try to. We shouldn't have to push ourselves past our extreme limits in order to be considered successful. I think that's a detriment to our community and our culture.
And I think people don't realize how deep it is, because me and Mr. Lott did work on the same campus together for a year, and we actually did get to the point where even though there was some resistance from jump, us even working together, you would think he's a veteran male teacher. I'm a young guy. I was only in my second year, so I'm considered pretty talented. You know, I had some good numbers toward the end of my first year, so I was seen as a rising star. So you think this be the perfect guy to match me up with? And, hey, you need to learn from him. Good at teaching math, but
it was like a mob mentality, man. They were like two of us together. They thought we were mobbing, man. They were breaking up.
Yes. They don't realize we were learning from each other, and like it was a natural match. He had more of a natural chill personality. I was very aggressive, and my approach was very demanding. And he was too. Like, I'm very demanding. So, but it seemed like we were a natural mesh. He's good at math. I'm good at reading. He differentiated math. It was like perfect. We were perfect match to work together and learn from each other, but it didn't work. Nobody said, hey, I need you and Mr. Lott need to get together. And I think y'all can really learn from each other. Nope. We almost have to be intentional ourselves to work together. And even then it came with some friction, because, he had been told negative things about me. And it's going to get to one of my final questions is, don't always be from the ones that look different than you. So Mr. Reece, you hadn't had a chance to answer this question. Do you feel, and you're kind of also like Mr. Gibson and obviously Aaron now in that administrative type role. So do you feel like they give more preference to the person who's a bit more soft-spoken in that situation? Because obviously you have to coach people. So how is that? Like, do you think preference is given to that?
Well, first of all, I agree with all three of these other brothers on that issue. Now, my perspective is a little different because my background is special ed. And I deal with life skill kids. So I have to step outside of my comfort zone. Thank you. I have to step outside of my comfort zone sometimes to reach my kids on a different level. And if you think about the parents that I dealt with most of my career, if you think about special ed kids, they have that stigma, but at the same time, parents kind of get frozen in time with their kiddos, even though they might be 22 years old, maybe unfortunately have cerebral palsy or some type of ID or IDD label. They still view them as kids because they have to care for them as little children almost. Right. So from my perspective, I just look at it as a page in my repertoire.
Right.
I'm not finna wear no costumes. I'm like Mr. Gibson. I'm not gonna come out.
You work in elementary, they gonna come for you.
You know what, man, and I'm ready for it to a certain extent, but I also feel, and I'll get to that part about elementary, but I just feel like I had to meet the needs of the kiddos of my population and their parents the way I needed to. Now, like I said, I never dressed up, but I would do fun things. Like you'll always see me smiling. When I get serious, then I'm not going to loud talk you. I'm going to pull you in close. And we're going to have a conversation. And my demeanor will change, and you will know that. But just know that that's not my demeanor all the time. Now, naturally, by nature, I'm a soft-spoken person. Okay, but like most black men, I can get loud and I can speak up and all that stuff. But
Remember, you said you had a button
like,
when we worked together. You said you had a
oh
button.
yeah, I have a button that I hide pretty well. It's been pushed by a few students, but I relocated it so nobody will find it. But just and just to speak on just coming into elementary, I kind of feel like on certain levels we kind of need that because our kids are young, they're impressionable, and sometimes they may have a stigma based off of what they've seen or the parents or how they were raised that black men are aggressive and they're angry, you know they're this, that, and the third, and we're not. We're just regular people who all have different personalities, all different type of temperaments. Our temperament should be based on our color, and that stigma needs to disappear. Now, I don't ever want, and it's funny because it was actually a white teacher that we both know, Jeremiah, who actually said you need to speak up and get louder. And I'm like,
Really?
I'm gonna do time. Yeah, we'll talk about it later. But I've just felt like my approach to each kid, each class, each person is different. I can't approach this person that way. I can't take a loud tone with this person this way because they'll react a certain way. So I just take it case by case. Now, as far as schools looking for that, like almost like a systemic type of deal where we don't want someone in our school that we're afraid of. So let's hire someone who's not so scared, almost in a sense. So we see I'm going to use Mr. Lott's word, effeminate, and there's nothing wrong with that word. And there's nothing wrong with people who are effeminate. It's okay. I know some black brothers who are effeminate and they're not gay. They're actually really good guys, but they just have personality. But I think in the school setting, they may prefer those people because they don't make them feel nervous. And if you think about it, white people are more so concerned about how other people make them feel, especially. So I just think, to me, I feel like it's a skill in our book to communicate with someone if I need to take it. But as far as my everyday temperament, I'm laid back. I'm an introvert by nature, but I'm soft spoken, but I'm not soft. So.
Now, what I kind of wanted to speak to is more. I mean, yeah, I agree pretty much what everybody was saying is like how important it is to have us to be not that effeminate way and be, who we are. Because, in my first assignment, like I think in my second classroom, 7 of the 8 boys didn't have a father at home. And I saw black males. No, it wasn't 7 to 8. It might have been 6 of 8. But a lot of the boys didn't have a father at home or, a strong male presence. So I realized how important that was. And you see how those kids respond differently to that. This is something for a whole different podcast as well. But, you see like how a lot of our boys, I think they're a bit too emotional now. And some of them are a bit too effeminate at times. I feel like that deserves its own podcast. I feel like that's a deep dive that we really have to look into as far as how our boys are really in education. Because I started to see some of the stuff once I kind of got in that some of my boys got some ways. I was like, I don't remember us being like this when our kids was kids. So I think it's very important for us to be, black males and be strong black males. And something I kind of saw working on school I worked at the last 2 years was that the black males weren't. It wasn't that they were bad kids. That was not the issue. It was more I could tell that they weren't used to somebody being tough on them. And I think that sometimes can be the problem too. Sometimes they're used to people being too tough, but sometimes it can be the reverse. So I've seen it kind of from both sides where they're kind of used to people kind of coddling them a little bit and like being nice, a little bit too nice to them. So they kind of are used to getting away with stuff and somebody not pushing them, or maybe they can do some stuff and the teacher just don't want them to do it. So they kind of just nice to them. So when you come in, sometimes they're like, they're not used to it, or sometimes they just straighten up because you're like, look, I can think of a particular kid this year. He came into my classroom a couple times for certain days, like when his teacher wasn't there, and he would act up, turn up in the other classroom, act up. And I would tell him as soon as he walked out, like, look, bro, I don't do all that. Like, I didn't give all the, hey, you can come sit over here. I like, look, we don't do all that in here. Like, you're going to sit, you're going to work. You're not going to get no Chromebook, just play no little game. Like, I told him straight up. And there was a time he asked for like a Chromebook or something. I was like, no. And that was it. And he didn't act up the whole day. Like, I ain't have no issues. And it was funny. I actually had an issue with another teacher because she got upset because they were explaining his discipline patterns and the stuff that he needed. They had to keep up with his behavior every 30 minutes. I'm like, that's absurd. What are you talking about? And I was like, look, I don't do all that in here. And that particular teacher took offense to it. And I was like, and I'm very short, so I kind of understood where she was coming from. I didn't think about that. But I was just, look, I just don't have no type of issues. I don't need to keep up with a kid's behavior every 30 minutes. Like, you gonna come in here and behave. I don't do all that extra stuff. We don't need all these rewards or none of that stuff. And my kids even know I don't give stuff for behavior. You're not gonna get a sticker for behaving. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. So I think it's just that expectation level. So I think it is important to have us in that classroom, and especially that elementary age, like those formative years. They need somebody that can tell them, like, this is how you're supposed to act, because it is important. And I know I'm planning on interviewing one of my former administrators. One of the most impactful things she told me, and something I think about often, is my first year. I remember a parent said that she was looking for a mentor for her son. And she's like, if you're looking for a mentor, he's in the classroom. He's getting taught by me, that person. This is my rookie year, so I still appreciate her to this day. I know her name is Miss Day for telling me that. So let's get to the next question. I'm trying to think of which one we can go with first. So, all right. So kind of speaking to them, we're talking about our frustration just being black male teachers. And I hope maybe if some of our black sisters that are teachers are listening, do you feel like we are supported, or even that our black sisters understand what we're truly going through? Because I feel at times that they really, truly don't. Because at the end of the day, we all know, especially as you go trend younger in education, like elementary and maybe middle school, that there not as many, is a very female dominated group. So do you feel like female teachers, our black female teachers, like really understand like what we're going through? So I'll go with Mr. Lott with that one first.
Loaded gun. Here we go. Pass it in my lap here. I'm going to get me in trouble with all the sisters now. No, I think it's a case-by-case situation, man. What I've kind of realized is that I was talking to a friend, and I'm just going to say it like the way he posts a lot of stuff, and I'm taking it away from education and then bringing it back to education. And he says that a lot of African-American young ladies can be used for white supremacy. I know it was loaded, and it's it talks about like how they're engineered to go to our finances, and then they have their children, and they want to get child support and things like that. But I think that kind of carries into the education, and I think what I mean by that is, I think there was an expression that black women are the most unprotected women in the world, right? Right. So when sometimes when you're coming into the education scenario, there is baggage that people are bringing when they see us. And there's some black women who will see us with that form or that lens of baggage. Like, who does he think he is? He's cocky. He's arrogant. He wants to be strong-willed. He's not going to talk to me. But really, that's maybe a reflection of the trauma or the experience that they have had outside of school, right? Because
Johnny treated me this way this time, and I'm
what happened?
It's like, Johnny, he did this. Oh, he just like Johnny. I can't stand him.
Exactly. And so they come to you with that kind of like that same mentality. And we could talk about an administrator who had kind of this like same like I hate men type mentality, and she wanted a seat of power, and we understand that, but she was kind of shooting she had kind of told me negative things about Jeremiah, and she was telling negative things about me, and I was like, you asked me to come over here. You know, it was crazy. It was crazy.
And by the way, two of the top four highest performing teachers in the whole school. So I mean, that's
we were high some of the highest performing teachers for sure. And so that would be some of the things that I see sometimes, is that sometimes they can feel as if you're trying to get their spot, because you know Aaron is an assistant principal. Is that correct? You're I'm sorry, I take that back. You are a curriculum director, right? Instruction specialist, correct? And then you're an assistant principal, Mr. Reece. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you see how like African American men have kind of been pushed or thrust to leadership, and then you see that African American young lady who might think, oh, he's trying to get my spot, so I've got to block him. Now that's that one aspect. But then there's other sisters that I've seen out there that go out their way. They understand, hey, it's a tough road. They want to be a partner and an associate with you and help you grow. But then, that would be like Miss Dixon. Like Miss Dixon was very much so, hey, she would always shout out Jeremiah, hey man, he's working so hard, he's getting these scores, whatever he's doing, listen to him. She's pushing this young man because she sees it's beneficial to the school. Then you also have those naysayers, who have had that trauma, and they bring it into and project it upon you, which is not fair. And that's everywhere in life, right? Like somebody sees, the news, and then they see a black man and they think, oh, all black men who wear hoodies are gonna rob you or whatever. So from my experience, I've seen both. I've seen some of those who have that baggage and they're ready to, you left us. You left us in slavery. You weren't there for us to support us. You weren't there. My dad wasn't there. You left me as a boyfriend, and I'm just a guy sitting in the room going,
bringing that personal foolishness into the
where's the dry erase markers, Right, and then there's these other young ladies who said, okay, you are the unicorn. Let's see, or you are the dragon. You are the one we haven't seen ever before. Let's push you as far as we can go. Let's make you an instructional specialist. Let's make you an assistant principal. There's room in the sky for all the stars to shine, right? So it's case by case from what I've seen.
I mean, everybody else is going to speak. I don't know if you could have articulated it any better when it comes to that, because I think that's kind of like the heart of kind of what I wanted to get to. Because I want to say this, I brought this topic not to offend my black sisters. I want all of us need to be teaching, regardless of color. We all love
black sisters. I want to put that out there.
We do. I think even the word, in a sense, they're probably mad that, like you said, that we didn't protect them. But at the same time, I feel in education, we're kind of in a reverse role where I feel like we need to be protected, but at times we're not. So, I'll go to Aaron.
Real quick stat out there real quick as well. I think someone was telling me that there's only 6% in the education field African American, and I guess out of that 6%, it's probably 1% African American men, right? So we're like seriously a small population, right?
Like a unicorn.
Just put that on your head, just to think about that,
Yes.
So Aaron, how's it, just from your viewpoint, have you felt like you've been protected, or like your female teachers, black teachers, understand where you're coming from or what you're dealing with?
I think some do. I think some don't. I think as Mr. Lott just said, that it's a case-by-case scenario. I think one of the things that I recognize more of a high school level is that you see a lot of African-American women allow African-American male teachers be there because they know some of these boys that are still at this high school need this before they go out into the world. So I've recognized that a whole lot. However, I do feel sometimes, and I have experienced a lot of talking about feeling intimidated or threatened because you're excelling, because you're great, because your scores are doing well, because you know how to teach, know the content, even you're great at discipline, so you're going to excel. And I think because of that, I think sometimes I have felt the thing of threatening, being intimidated, and so I would say it's a case by case. I think I've been more of in a high school, just seeing how they allow male teachers just to be in those boys' lives because they recognize they need it. Like Mr. Lott said, hey, sometimes they do bring things from their personal lives to there. Just like I bring some of my preconceived biases. I think we all have biases, and I think sometimes with those biases, we bring them to our jobs, we bring them to our vocations, and it kind of has a ripple effect upon the people that are there.
All right. So Mr. Reece, have you do you and you kind of in a little bit different environment, but and I would say like both me and Mr. Reece, we worked at the same school together, and I would say at that particular school, before Mr. Reece talks, is I do feel like they had a high appreciation for black males because I can still remember having conversations. They said like before, and it wasn't just black male, but males came to school, but majority of the ones that did come to work at that school were black males. They did have a lot of problems with behavior. They did have a lot of problems with things like that. But once they started getting more males, which majority were black males, they had less problems. Obviously, what Mr. Reece has done, even since I've left, I mean, he's changed the culture of that school. So I kind of just set that up. But Mr. Reece, like, how has your experience being with like black sisters supporting you as a teacher?
Well, just to speak on Carlton real quick, you're right. We are very valuable there,
Mm-hmm.
simply on a logistic basis. We have
Mm-hmm.
kids that stay there till they're 22 years old, and sometimes they grow up to be 6'3", 6'5", 4 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So with males, not only just black males, but just males in general, it's always good to have that type of physical support because of situations that may occur. And at the Carlton Center, I've always felt supported by the black female teachers there. They've always
For sure.
encouraged me, like always. Now, as a whole experience, and before I get into it, I just want to shout out my principal, who is a first year black female teacher principal, and who is younger than me. We're both first year official AP and principal. And she is a phenomenal lady. She's very supportive. She understands a lot of the struggles that we're talking about now. So big shout out to Kimberly Simmons. I'll see you Monday. But I have not really, in my career, experienced any not non-supportive action from black female teachers. It always seems like they've always been encouraging, only because kind of like what Mr. Lott alluded to and Mr. Bailey, that they know that there is a need and a void on
Mm.
all levels. And they've always encouraged me. I guess they observe how I am with kids and they like what they see, I guess. I don't know, but I've always experienced encouragement. I've never felt any type of shade or now I can't say that about my female white teachers, but my female black teachers, no, I'm serious. I got some stories about that.
We all got some stories. That can turn into a different podcast in itself.
Sure.
But I definitely understand what Mr. Lott and Mr. Bailey are talking about. I've just never personally experienced it. Maybe there was some shade thrown behind my back, but I don't really care about that. We here to educate these kids, simply put. So all the backstabbing, shade, when you work with me, I quickly do not care about that. Okay.
Mm.
We're finna come together and come up with this amazing curriculum and to reach these kids' deficiencies, or eventually you'll get weeded out. And I've seen that over time where if you don't have your best intentions and your best foot forward to educate children, especially children that are minority, you will not last long,
Mm-hmm.
in my experience. But like I said, I haven't experienced it from my black sisters that teach. Shout out to all of them. You're much needed. We need those mother figures as well. Yeah, that's right, Mr. Lott. Yeah, we appreciate y'all definitely. And like I said, I haven't really experienced it. I'm not saying that I won't. Like I said, I've only been in education for 11 years. This is going into my 11th year, so not really.
All right. So, Mr. Gibson, what has been your experience? 'Cause I think it seems like you worked in a just variety of type of environment. So, what has been your experience as far as your black sisters supporting you as far as a black male educator?
The support that I've experienced has been phenomenal, right? And I have to say that in all honesty. And all of the places that I've been, rural, urban, suburban, those sisters that I have encountered have been, they've been quite supportive. They're, they sometimes they end up getting stuff twisted among themselves, but usually with brothers, they are supportive. And I have been in a couple of situations here in the Houston area where being the only black male in the building, and in both instances, the first black male in the building. So there, the one or two black female teachers who were there in many instances. Some were older, some were younger. They would go out of their way to make certain that I had what I needed, and were very supportive. So the only one time in an urban setting where I felt didn't get the support that that I needed to be successful was in a situation where it was actually my first administrative assignment, first time AP, and ended up with an assistant. With a black female principal who was horrible, and it could have been what the brother said earlier, what somebody did to her, and she's gonna take it out on every other brother she ever has to, she encounters that as subordinate to her. I don't know. It really doesn't matter, but that was the only time, and it really caught me by surprise. It caught me with my guard down as far as dealing with that person.
Well, and I would say, I kind of it's a mixed bag, and Mr. Lott kind of spoke to a person that we both had dealings with, and that probably been my most least pleasurable experience with a black female educator as far as coming against me and things like that. But I would like to take this time. It's a couple people that are really black female educators that really have supported me, not just I feel like understood where I was coming from, but really supported me. I know when I was at the Carlton Center, I can remember vividly my first year. There's some particular white female teachers. Mind you, I was just a pair that decided to come against me. I started to dress well.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I started to do I was doing the right things. My teacher that I worked under, she was saying, man, Jeremiah's going to be a great teacher. I'm like, I was a year and a half away from even teaching. But then a couple of teachers started giving me a hard time. But I remember that pair I was in the room with, her name's Regina Walker. So I won't her name out there, that she literally I actually got on her nerves because I was very fidgety. So I got on her nerves. It was in the same classroom. So somebody like me that move around, doing all this stuff, it drove her crazy, but she knew that wasn't right. So she literally, and the school is small. It's a 2-hall school. So she went to the other hall and really told them basically leave him alone. And you know what they did? Left me alone. So
yeah, Gina didn't play. Gina did not play. Everybody, white, black, brown, yellow, they respect Gina. Sure.
And another person at that school who maybe not early that first year, but going into that summer and going into that next year, Carolyn Harris at that school, she really, and I still talk to her to this day. I go by, and even after my first year at my old school, I had a pretty good conversation with her about some things. And then, as I kind of went into my first 2 years, when I had a chance to work with Mr. Lott, there was some people that Miss Dixon had my back, and I can think of a lady, Miss Scott. Miss Megan Scott, she had my back a whole lot. She was in the room when I got hired, so I'm sure she had a vested interest in protecting me. But I'm not talking about going just to bad. I'm talking about people actually coming against me and actually trying to jack up my career and mess my career up. And she actually went to bat and shut it down. And then I know of Vernisha Day, who was the assistant principal. She always helped me with behavior, and she actually helped me out. Even once I left that school, she kind of did me a solid so I can get my next job. So I can think of that person. Even at the school I was at the last 2 years, Cron Elementary lady, and I want to say her name because she probably don't realize how much I appreciated her at this school, lady Mardice Celestine. She really helped me out and really had my back in a lot of situations and gave me a lot of good advice throughout the process. We actually go to the same church too. So I wanted to highlight, because I don't want to talk about I don't want even my sisters to kind of misinterpret, think I'm just trying to come against them and say they don't really support us. But there is a question out there sometimes if they really support us the way that they should. And there's some that are not. And I've experienced it. So I kind of wanted that question because I think people need to understand the full scope of being a black male in education and what all you have to deal with. It's not as simple just walking in, you do well, and the kids love you, and everything's gonna be peaches and cream. Everybody gonna love you. It does not work out that way. So our final question I wanted to get to before we get to the big question of why aren't there more of us, and I'll give everybody a chance just to say why they think why on that question. But how is it sometimes being a black male, especially us that I guess sometimes been in elementary, or how's it being expected to be an authority figure? Because a lot of times, we get the bad kids being an authority figure without having authority. So, Mr. Gibson, I'm gonna go to you first on that because you've seen the full range as being a regular teacher, then being an administrator. How's it being an authority figure without being given authority?
Well, I think what ends up happening is, in some instances, the authority comes from actually the authority is given to you from the parents.
Right.
As far as dealing with their kids, and I've had many a phone call where I'm calling you because he won't listen to me. It's like, okay, you feeding him, I'm not, but you end up understanding that there are times, because let's face it, there are so few of us in K through 12 education, and especially at the lower level. The lowest I was taught was third grade, and I did that 1 year. But the thing is about that, about those little kids, and my being in one of two schools where I was the first black male and then the only black male there. Even the other kids, from other ethnic backgrounds, they want to touch you. They'll wave at you to see if you wave back and smile. And that because in many instances you're the first black male they've been around or interacted with. Mm-hmm. So sometimes that authority, that I guess you would call it unofficial authority, many times comes from the trust that you end up getting from those parents. Now, we're in that. I put a caveat right here. Understand where that authority ends, because that's sometimes where we may end up blurring the lines or crossing a line that was like, how did this happen? That was not my intention, so you kind of sort of have to stay in your lane, know where that lane is, and work with those parents that believe in you and give you that authority to work with your kids academically as well as socially.
So, Mr. Reece, how is it like with you and I guess you kind of been a little bit in a different role, like, because you definitely deal with behavior. So essentially that's what you have done most of your career. So how is it kind of being an authority figure without being an authority? Before you became an administrator, obviously.
Sure. It's frustrating because, like a lot of us have alluded to, we're looked to kind of manage those difficult behaviors in school. And when you're looked to do that, but you have so many like reins around you, like, okay, we want you to get these behaviors under control, but we also want you to fall back. It's just frustrating. I mean, I would say, me personally, kind of like what Mr. Gibson said, the parents really give you the authority. The administrators are really just trying to make sure you don't screw up too bad or make a mistake. But as far as being able to connect with their child on a authority type level, that's given to you by parents, and that's given through trust. Whether they look at me and we have the same type of skin color that makes them trust me more, or what they've observed or heard about me in the community that makes me trust them more. Either way, the parent gives that to you. So kind of to counter that question is, I have as much authority as the parents want to give me. You know, it's kind of what Mr. Gibson. It was very, very insightful to hear him say that, because, and I hadn't thought about it until he said, I was like, well, you know, you're right. The parents, as long as you connect with them on that level and let them know that you're genuinely there for their student and I want to see them succeed, you have free range. When I left the district that I'm back in now to go to Sci-Fair, I had parents calling and texting me for 2 years after that. Ask me about, hey, you know, such and such as this, and my kid just wants to talk to you, hear your voice, and all that. And mind you, I'm dealing with the special needs community, so their attachment is pretty. They get pretty attached. But you know, it's really the authority is given by the parents, because we're at the end of the day, we're here to serve the community, and the community includes the parents. So,
and I'll tell you, them parents do not support you.
Yo,
Yeah.
oh man, you got to get them on your team, man. It's yeah.
That's it. And the funny part,
It's
I always tell
essential.
people, like, I see teachers that have issues with parents. I'm like, man, the easiest thing to do is like develop a good relationship with the kids. They go home, hey, Mr. Short is awesome. They're going to support you, and don't call them all the time. Tell them how bad the kids are. That tends to help your case. Not doing that, but that's just a little blurb of my own. But the people who have trouble with that. So
they know now since the pandemic.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Yes. Because they was like, man, I don't see how you dealt with it. I really appreciate you. Now, and I think there's a lot of parents when they come out of that pandemic having a different level of appreciation. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. No doubt.
But so, Mr. Bailey, how has it been for you? And you teach a group of kids. So how has it kind of been like an authority figure in that role without really having authority? Because I mean, you are dealing with older kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mr. Gibson, Mr. Reece said it all. Like when the parents, and I would even say, I think something Mr. Reece said, the community kind of gives you the authority.
Right.
I've been in my same school for, this has been my 6th year. The community knows me, right? The community, I've taught, you know, Johnny's brother, cousin, everybody. So now because they know me, they respect me, they trust me, and I don't have a disdain or any tension when it comes to authority. It's just more of because the parents, because the community pretty much knows me. I just really haven't had that a lot of trouble. I just kind of, hey, when I have a time to be able to, you know, talk to a kid or to be around that kid, to help that kid, I do, and I just kind of stay in my lane. So I just really haven't had that interaction.
So I wanted to say Mr. Lott for last. I think, you know, he's worked in a couple different environments, so he probably definitely had a chance to work in a couple of different types of situations. So, Mr. Lott, how's it been for you kind of being an authority figure without really being given the true authority?
Okay, and I think I'm going to speak from our experience. So I'm going to start it like this. All of us here have a love of knowledge to the highest degree. I feel like that's what we're here for. Like whatever it is, whether it's science, special education, just all around knowledge, math, reading, we have a highest level of knowledge that we would like to impart to our students and to society. I think when you're saying that question out here, what is it like to have authority without having authority? From what I've seen and I've noticed, now I could be wrong, is that the African-American men who are the general ed instruction teachers, we tend to get the more difficult students because we have some type of authority. But we don't have authority. Is that what you're trying to say, Jeremiah?
Yeah. You
really
don't have true final say because somebody else can come and reverse what you do. And
I remember at Thompson at one point, I felt like we would switch classrooms. That was our strategy. Is like we had a planning period, so we switched classrooms to teach instruction according to our strengths. So I would switch and do math.
And we didn't ask, just for clarity.
And he would switch to do ELA for me. When I was in there, I noticed he had a lot of strong personalities. Now we both could handle it easily because of who we are and what we desire to impart to the students. So that became a bit of a frustration because I know how strong of a teacher Jeremiah is and how strong of a teacher I desired to be. And, you know, maybe we got 89, 90%. We could have had 99% had we had those kids spread out evenly. So that I can see even being a bit of frustration. right? So
like we didn't switch. We had self-contained. So even if it was like a switch classroom, you could have split them amongst the classrooms.
Along the hall, right, in 5th grade, like or 4th grade, as opposed to putting 12 troubled students in Jeremiah's class. Let's put 2 in each.
And I'm gonna get to the raw numbers when I talk. I'm gonna paint a real picture for people.
You're right. And so I think that's what I can hear you saying is like being an authority, but without having that true authority. So you have to play, the deputy to a sheriff who's out having drinks at the bar, right? So you're not even getting that type of support, right? So, but then on the other side, I'm hearing what Mr. Gibson said, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Reece is saying we have street cred to some extent. We have the rapport that starts in the classroom that we build with those students who want to see us. I walk around my school, I have kids waving at me. I don't even know who they are. They're just
God,
hey, they want to see. Right? So I'm building rapport with these guys. I'm trying, I'm trying.
I don't know you.
I don't ever say that. But I say, hey, guy, or I make up names for them. I give nicknames like, bubblegum head. Or I don't know anything just because I don't know who they are, right? I just want to say, and they feel important, So I think that is a very powerful tool that we have been given. So that's the plus as African Americans, the authority that we have, because I've had situations where I've had to use my authority to stop a teacher and a parent from fighting just from seeing me in my presence. Hey, I'm not going to beat this teacher up because there's a black guy there. But before it might not have been, they might have tore him out the frame. So those are things that I say are positive as our authority. But then it does get a little frustrating at times when they feel like our only contribution to the community is to be the crowd control, to be the disciplinarian, to be the hammer. Right? We want to teach to the highest degree. We want to make scientists and doctors and lawyers and things like that. So it's a double-edged sword. I'm thankful that I get a chance to be able to be that that tide turner, but as well I would like to be able to be considered a strong intellectual and a strong teacher. So. That's
right. And I totally agree.
And I can kind of get really into it because we did work at the same school together. But I can remember my rookie year, I was classified as a floor disciplinarian, not in a sci fair or not in a Klein where the kids sprint is rough. I was a floor disciplinarian in spring. That's literally what I was referred to as. And one of my teammates who didn't even too much care for me even said, like, man, they treat you like you're Superman. And I was like, I'm just a man. I'm not Superman at all. And I'm still trying to learn how to teach. My body's behavior stuff, I don't even know how to teach yet. And I'm trying to control all these behaviors and, have these students come in and they don't tell you that these kids were problems. And thanks for my mentor teacher, Mr. Corey Neblett. He told me I had some students come in mid-year or a different time. He's like, I ain't telling you, if a student come in mid-year from Spring ISD, they are going to be a behavior issue. Trust me. Pretty much. And he ain't never lied. He was every student I got that came in at a certain point mid-year were always behavior issues in my 2 years in that particular district. And I can remember my second year is really what stuck out to me. And Mr. Lott spoke about that, like, them strong personalities. I had 3 kids that were GT and had been put out of schools. So you could just 3 black males that you just got to think about what's all going on with those kids. And I love those kids to death. I still keep up with a lot of them. But I think at one point, I'm talking about raw numbers. I had 6 kids out of the 24 I had like been put out of a school. So you're talking about basically 25% of your classroom are potential almost alternative kids. And like I said, I love the kids. A lot of them did well on the star, all that good stuff. But I'm kind of like, and that was not the makeup of the other classrooms. Now, and then at one point, I had 3 kids that were emotionally disturbed in one classroom. One of them eventually getting pulled because he did something extreme and he ended up getting pulled. And it was kind of like, I remember I never was the type to go and complain about students getting put out the classroom. There was a couple times I really had to sit up at night and really think about it. And I was just like, man, I had 3 kids that were ED. And I think I remember telling the counselor, like, y'all know y'all coming from behavior school. At a behavior school, Mr. Reece can tell you this, they won't even put 2 ED kids in one classroom. At a behavior school where you're trained and that's literally what you do. So what make you think you go put those kids in a regular classroom with other high behavior kids and expect them to be able to function and not act up?
Jeremiah, remember you said at the beginning, like, I had all these gray hairs, so that's where they're coming from, man.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it was very rewarding in a sense, kind of being in an authority role, but people don't know. And like, it was even a point, one particular month that school year where parents were like criticized in the classroom with this, and this. And the classroom was fine until we had a really bad incident where like one kid got dumped on his head. kid didn't get removed from the classroom, anything like that. And parents don't know, like, you know, our principal at the time was like reversing my discipline. I would tell the kid, they're like, oh, I'm gonna go tell such and such. And you're like, oh, you can't do that. And then what do you think the other kids gonna do? If the two most disruptive students in the classroom don't have to face discipline, what do you think the rest of them are gonna do? So it's kind of like, you know, so I had to deal with up and down behavior the whole year. And I had one particular student, Mr. Lott knows I'm talking about, I'm not gonna mention his name, but he was, so when he wasn't there, the classroom was perfectly fine. And people kept saying, take him out, put him in a different classroom, take him out. Mind you, the other teachers' classrooms were nowhere near as rough. But, you know, they put me in there because it was kind of a double-edged sword, because I did have a lot of kids that were behavior issues, but they were high performers. So they were like, and the specials teachers would even come to me, they're like, why do they not break this classroom up? They giving you, like, they literally they say it makes no sense. But they were like, oh, I heard that they all performing. They were the highest performing classroom in the whole school. And I still remember I was tutoring a student from a different classroom one particular day, and she was like, man, y'all be so loud in there. I bet y'all ain't learning nothing. I was like, actually, they're the highest performing class on the grade level. She was like, for real? I was like, yeah, actually. I mean, they got 91% in reading, and Miss Dixon didn't want to say it yesterday, and 87% in math, thanks to Mr. Lott, too. But it's kind of like the numbers were good, but I was kind of like, man, what Mr. Lott was saying, if you possibly pull one student, or if I was more supported, the number might have actually been higher. And honestly, that particular classroom that year, I don't think it was a lot of other things going on. You know, it was kids. I had one child lost a mother, another child lost a sister. Even I lost my grandmother, and father had a stroke. It was a lot of things going on. So really, that classroom didn't need any more heat or any more stress on it, but people didn't really care. But then, you know, the thing that irked me is I would hear, I'm like, oh, you need to go to a good professional development on classroom management. I'm like, are you serious? And people don't understand this, how, and I guess I'm bending a little bit here, but how tough it was with that particular classroom. I remember four of the teachers from my grade level got called to the office for an issue with some students. And the other teacher got we had student teachers, they filled in for those particular teachers. They had two teachers fill in for me. Two. And mind you, they couldn't even control the classroom. And there's not no diss on them or anything. They may even watch this, but that's how rough the kids were. And they understood where I was coming from. And that was probably my one year I was just like, I can never go through that again. Like, that was too much. And I even would say I would probably ask for some kids to be pulled, because I was like, you just expecting too much, then you're not giving me any authority to discipline those students. Now, I would say I had a much more pleasurable experience in my last 2 years. And teaching people like Mr. Gibson, the grandson, that I feel like, I don't even say it's an authority thing. I just felt like the kids have always respected me in that sense. And the parents have been very supportive. I don't think I've dealt with more than one or two parents who I would say, like, if their kids were acting up, I was like, hey, they were doing such and such, where it wasn't just a conversation. It was like, hey, you know, the kid's doing this, can you talk to them about it? And they would, and the behavior would get addressed. I felt like it was more appropriate the last 2 years. Now, oddly enough, once that happened, I was able to focus more on that pedagogical stuff and things like that. So, and that kind of is another issue within education too, is, and maybe we could talk about this on a whole different podcast, as far as like, they only kind of see us as behavior people, and instead of being pedagogically strong and all those things. But I might get into that when I talk about why there aren't more of us. So all right, so that big final question, and we kind of made okay time. I guess we had some technical difficulties earlier. So I'll start with Mr. Lott, since you ended the last one. I guess our ending salvo. Why don't you think there are more of us in education? And that's Black males, just be specific to people listening.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I don't, man, I want to answer it honest, and I'm trying not to be too honest. I'm really bad about that. Oh man, I really think the American education system just doesn't like us. That's probably the best way to say it. They just don't like us. It's like there's no way around it. They just, because when I've watched the struggle that Jeremiah has had to go through, and since I've met him, and he's an amazing teacher, and there's really not any reason not to like him. Like, he really cares about education. We can talk about education for hours and hours. So I know he has a passion for it, but they just don't want you there. That's the only thing I can think of, because I really don't know outside of that why there's not more of us. I mean, I feel like there are people, I feel like I know a lot of Black men that have went into education and can say I've taught for a year or so, but I don't see them staying. So that's probably my biggest issue, that they just, I don't know why they don't like us. You know, they may love our culture, they may love us to some extent, but they don't like us as teachers. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't know.
All right, and I'm gonna have some things to say at the end. But Mr. Gibson, why do you feel that there isn't more of us in education?
I think that part of that is, if you think about it, education is the only field in which you have to get an advanced degree to get a promotion or to get a pay raise. And I think that's part of it. As Mr. Lott said, you know, you run into people who taught a year or two and they moved on. And let's just be honest about it. Pay scale has a lot to do with it. You know, many, you know, they'll go into other fields, or people like the brother who I'm not good with names sometimes. The brother who's in biology, is instructional specialist at North Forest High School. I mean, you know, that biology and chemistry is a lucrative field, you know, and there are a lot of different paths he could take. I know of I believe a chemistry major from Prairie View who, well, the way things are now, I don't know, but left education and went to ExxonMobil and was doing quite well financially. And I think that's it more than anything else with brothers in being in education. They want to, you know, it is a profession, and as professionals, as educated brothers, sometimes education doesn't bring home the income that you imagine having as a college educated Black man. That is, I think that's one, you know, that's one of the obstacles, and some of it. The other thing is the politics, where they like us, as Brother Lott said, they like us, but and they don't like all of us, you know, and you have that kind of dynamic going on, you know, as far as education is concerned, and it's the politics and the push and pull, and Austin and all of the other state houses that play these games, you know, with us, as far as what they do things that they don't realize that impacts that day to day, that bell to bell. Because if a lot of these folks can come and do, I challenge them, the governor on down, come and do one period in any school, you choose it, and
Preach.
just do one period. I promise you, by the end of that 55 minutes, they would be like, "Oh my God, you know, how do y'all do this?" You know, so. But as far as Black men in education, as I said, initially in our community, the men who were educated were ministers, and most likely teachers as well, as far as their vocation was concerned. So they were, you know, you saw them, but as a lot of these other professions have opened up to us a bit more, you end up with brothers headed in those directions, and they don't want to teach. But then there are others, like some of you on the panel, you have totally different major, but you decided to come into teaching. The only thing I would say, and I'll leave you with this, and I know you're already committed, but I tell everybody, if you want to be a teacher, or even if you want to be a school administrator, you better have a made up mind.
I think you kind of said a mouthful with that, and I don't want to kind of let that just hang there. He kind of just saying you got to have that made up mind, like this is what you want to do, because you're going to deal with some challenges. So you can't just think you're just going to walk in and everybody just teaching things that maybe we even romanticized when we were kids. You see on TV, you see the movies. Because you think about, like, say, a Joe Clark, you know, you see those movies, like, oh, it ends up being kumbaya at the end, and folks don't get, like, you can't just do that. Like, it's just not gonna be that.
And you know, in my retirement, I am doing I'm doing something with the appraisal district, the Harris County Appraisal District. And one of the questions I was asked when I interviewed for this position on this board, guy says, "Do you have a problem? You know, will you have a problem with people being upset with you about a decision that you've made?" I ended up telling him, "Sir, I retired as a middle school assistant principal. On any given day, the parents are mad at me. My boss is mad at me. All the teachers are mad at me. Even the neighborhood dog growls at me when I get out of my car. So having to make a decision that folks are not going to be happy about, well, I've been there. And that's the kind of thing you have to you have to be able to deal with as well. You know, having a decision reversed. I mean, you know, even at the administrative level, I've had decisions reversed. You know, and I've had to swallow it. I have to live with it. Those are the sort of things when you get down into the weeds that you have to really take a strong look at. Can I handle this? You know, I've been there where I've had to handle, you know, ask that question to myself and be be honest with the answer. And sometimes that has been no, but I've gotten through it. But you've got to, you know, that's part of it too, as far as brothers being in education, because there are going to be times when those the pay grade above you are going to second guess you, and sometimes not really knowing, you know, even though you've laid it out for them, not really knowing, not taking into consideration your insight, your intellect sometimes.
Mm. So, Mr. Bailey, just from your viewpoint, why do you think there aren't as many of us?
Well, I have a question. Are you talking about educators or just teachers, or just both?
Well, I mean, I guess it could be. I mean, of course, most people do start off as teachers. So why don't you think there are more black male teachers?
Well, I would say teachers just because I think Mr. Gibson did a good job talking about the pay. That's just, I mean, a lot of these black males have families and they want to earn more. And just as Mr. Gibson said, hey, you're college educated and you probably have an advanced degree. So you feel like you should make a certain number or certain dollar amount as an educator. So I think that's one thing. And I think because of the pay scale, you see a lot of black male teachers get out the classroom. I think there's money in education, but I don't think there's money. There's not as much money in the classroom than outside.
Right.
So I think because of that, you see a lot of black male teachers leave. Also, I think they do want to make change, so they leave the classroom. I think also when it comes to this education in general and just black educators, why they leave after 1 or 2 years, I think pay scale, I think that's a big deal. I think that's truly big. And I mean, also, I think they may find something a little better. So I think that's just two things. But I think for me, the more thing is just looking at the pay and wanting to be paid. And yeah.
All right. So, Mr. Reece, why do you think there aren't as many? And we can say black male teacher or black male educators.
I think, like Mr. Gibson, he brought the major point home, but also Mr. Lott said something too. If you have been educated by a system who hasn't treated you fairly, why would you in turn want to go and work in that organization? I think that is a big turnoff for a lot of black males, because for one, like the stat, I think he brought up 6% of educators are black. So how many of that are black men? Like do black men really want to go in an environment like that? And I think that's a major question. Of course, the pay scale is a big deal. And also something Mr. Gibson kind of just struck me in my heart is that you need to have your mind made up that this is the path you want to travel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had that similar experience. Like I said, my degree is in electrical engineering. Now I've been flown all over the country when I was getting ready to graduate to interview for Boeing, Lockheed and Martin.
Mhm.
And every time I went in those interviews, I bombed because it wasn't my passion. I was just doing it for money. And once I come to grips with the fact that I need to be happy in what I do for a living, then my thirst to get a certain amount of dollars, which is not, it's not, I understand because, you know, if you have family, you got kids, you got bills, you have to make a certain amount of money. But I realized early on, and I did make that commitment, like Mr. Gibson alluded to, that this is what I want to do because at the end of the day, as frustrating as it can be, when I think about my kiddos, I smile. There has never been a job or profession that I was chasing that made me smile when I was done with it for the day. So I think, and I'll also make this point too. While we're here in this pandemic, and a lot of us alluded to it, parents are understanding really what education is about, how difficult it is. But I think now is the time. I think maybe if people are looking for a career change, especially young black men, or just say black men, now is the time to get in education. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you've come from a career or a industry who's failing, like the oil industry is not doing so well, and you have a thirst for knowledge, and I feel like education is not a profession; it's a duty
Mhm.
that
A
we're all
calling.
employed with. As it's a calling, it's a community thing.
Mhm.
If you're in an industry that's not supporting you financially, it's always going to be something in education, you know. So
Mhm.
I want to employ black men. If you have the calling, if it's in you, answer it because you're needed. We need you,
Mhm.
young
Mm-hmm.
black boys, our young black girls, our young
Mhm.
brown and black girls and boys. We need you so that we can kind of change the narrative about who black men are. We're not just aggressive and thugs and all of that. We're so much more. We're learned
Mhm.
men. We're educated.
Mhm.
Whether we are in
Mhm.
a setting that promotes that or not, we have a thirst for knowledge. And I think that now, especially with the four of us or the five of us, we need to start planting seeds in these young kids. Like, hey, it's okay to be a teacher.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think Brother Lott and Brother Bailey and Brother Gibson, they kind of hit the nail on the head when saying that financial is definitely a big issue, and just not really kind of wanting to work for an organization that didn't support you when you were in school. Like I said, I think three of us didn't have black male educators until we were in college.
Right.
So now that we have people like Mr. Lott, Mr. Short, Mr. Bailey, and we have Mr. Gibson, but he's I know he's guiding Mr. Short and his future endeavors. It is our responsibility to start planting those seeds. If especially on the elementary level, and I'm excited to get the opportunity to work in elementary because I want to start planting seeds. Seeds are important.
Mhm.
They grow, you water them, and they continue to flourish throughout their lives. Maybe
Right.
they'll come back and teach the next generation.
Yeah.
So, I guess mine's probably gonna be a little long-winded, but I'll start off with what Mr. Gibson said is I'm an educator that, kind of does have his mind made up that this is what I want to do. And I think people truly don't understand, after my first year or toward the end of my first year, I had a chance to cover the NCAA tournament. I had a chance to cover, I think it was North Carolina and Duke. It was for a newspaper out of North Carolina here at NRG. And I remember like a question I asked, Coach K actually corrected me on something I said. I thought it was pretty cool. And, I had that awesome opportunity. And the guy was like, hey, man, I want you to come up here, a black guy, come up here and shake things up, man. I want you to come down here and write for me. And I was kind of like, I thought about it, but I didn't think about it that long. I was kind of like, no, man, I know what I want to do. And I honestly didn't get a teaching job for another year. And I still remember that moment to this day. But I felt, and I'm gonna speak to like what Mr. Lott is talking about. I felt since the moment, as I told you from my first day, it's like people have basically been trying to get me to not do it, period. Out of that lady on the first day telling me you don't know what you're doing. I could think my first year, and I speak up for the white female teacher I worked on, and I'm gonna get to the whole white female's perspective on that. She spoke up for me and said that, you know, and at the time I wasn't necessarily dealing with any trouble or anything, but she was saying, man, Jeremiah's gonna be a great teacher. So even I didn't understand it at the time because I was just a para and I was planning on teaching possibly even high school at the time. But she was like, and I'm gonna thank Ann Scott, and I'm gonna say her name. It was, I think she got married, but it's something different now. But I actually wasn't even gonna work elementary. I thought about working high school because I just like, I don't want to be no male working elementary. There's too much going on. This and this. She was like, hey, they ain't nothing but the devil. And I would never classify her as the most religious person, but I remember her telling me that at the time and shifting my focus at that time. But as she started to talk me up, I started to dress people better. And these particular people said I was soft. So I guess they're going to teach me a lesson. Now, this isn't one of those things where, you know, you guess and you get paranoid and say somebody's really trying to get after you. We know for a fact that these people said they were going to get me in trouble and try to mess me up. This isn't like conjecture, or this is literally a fact. And that time Regina went and defended me. So that was really my first real experience. My second year was pretty cool. Can't really complain too much. And then, you know, as I went to Thompson Elementary, I felt like, you know, I was on the team, just being real. I had two white female teachers. Our lead teacher was a white female who husband was poker buddies with the principal. So you could just guess how that went. And then another white female teacher, like, you know, moments like that, you know, and the word I would use too is I felt like a lot of people just have been threatened by my presence. Because my first year, even though I was always a person that's gonna stay working hard regardless of what people say, I mean, it was people saying on the early onset of my career, they're like, hey, you are gonna be a superstar. And I almost felt like that was the worst thing somebody ever did to me. But what I started to see was that a lot of people, because my thing, if those people are saying that, what do you think those other people are thinking about it? And
can I add something real quick to that? What I was saying earlier is that's what I've seen with black males, or just Jeremiah was one of the people I watched a lot when I first came to the school. He would always beat me to the school, and I was trying to be there at 6:30, and he was there. You know, he'd be in his room preparing, bookshelf full of like motivational books on how to be a leader and a teacher and things like that. And I saw so much opposition against him. I mean, it's not like 2-3 teachers, right? Not like, I'm talking about floors of teachers. I'm talking about admin, and I'm like, why are they so hell-bent on trying to stop this man? And I've seen this pattern, you know, continue. So that's why I said what I said earlier, is that there's some I don't know, but there's something that's pushing against that, because I can't understand how a teacher who has a 90% average on passing rate have so much trouble.
Right.
I don't see how that's that's like telling Michael Jordan he can't touch the basketball. Like I don't understand. You know, so that's where I'm like, so I'm gonna go. I just wanted to say that and let you get back on what you're saying. But I think Mr. Lott is adding
that context, because I mean, the statements, what people don't understand is, you know, these people speak against me, but I can think my first year, my team, one of my biggest frustrations, and a lot of rookies have this frustration, they will listen to nothing I had to say. I'll try to give opinions or have a perspective on something. And my kids wasn't hitting 90 at that time, but you know, I came with a different viewpoint. I was managing the kids well and was showing potential. I can remember, and I'm really a pretty good writer. So when we got near writing start and we had to do boot camps and all this type of stuff, and we're like, oh, who's going to take the bubble kids? And then my teammates, people that came against me, spoke very ill of me. They were like, oh, Mr. Short, you know, you're the best writing teacher. Why don't you take them? I'm like, are you serious? And this isn't the only moment in my career I've dealt with things like this. And my second year, my kids ended up doing very well on the Star, and my teammates, we get in there, we had to do SSI group, which is where you had to reteach the kids. Hey, Mr. Short, why don't you take I was able to take all the kids and reading them, kind of like, I'm pretty sure. And just to show you how, and he said it was administrative. I was the highest performing teacher in the building. I was doing well in math and reading with Mr. Lott and other teachers. And every member of my team, except for one who was out most of the year, and there was a person that took over for him, they got teacher of the month. Every teacher on my team got teacher of the month except for me. And I outperformed them the whole year with the worst kids. So it's kind of like, I know people said teaching is a thankless job, but I feel that was highly intentional. There's no way it wasn't. And it's kind of hard for the stuff not to be a little hurtful. it's hard for me to believe that wasn't a little intentional. And, you know, people coming against you, but then you making them look good. And I even told one administrator, we had a really good conversation one day, and it was mostly positive, but I was like, man, I feel like I'm competing with my own administrators, because you hear about what they did in the classroom. They were this score, they were that score, and I'm coming in as a second-year teacher, being self-contained. I only think if I could just teach reading, I could have probably blew the roof off. And I'm hearing what their scores were, and I'm superseding that or going above that, and I felt like I was competing with my own administrator. So I feel like people just have always been threatening. And I can just think my last 2 years, the stuff that I went through, and I'm going to speak more about it in the coming weeks. There's a reason I'm not speaking on it now. But I will in the coming weeks, or I will be able to. But the level of opposition that I have faced in the last 2 years of people just flat questioning your ability, people telling you need to, and I even wrote an article about it where you're talking about putting you on a growth plan, or having you go watch somebody else teach, and you have the highest performance on the grade level. I'm like, and I tell people just as a visual, my third year, and I love my partner teacher. She was the teacher of the year, and I had better growth numbers than her. And her numbers were good. That's the thing. I had better growth numbers than the person that was the teacher of the year. But then people telling me I need to go watch somebody else teach. Mind you, I'm a third-year teacher doing this. In reading, my kids grew more points in reading than in math. And anybody that taught math knows that's normally not how it goes. Most time reading, you grow, the numbers normally like 6 or 7 in a year. My kids were getting like 18, 19 points growth mid-year. And they did the same thing this year. I went down to second grade. I didn't know what a diphthong was. I didn't know what any of this stuff was. I had to kind of learn it on the fly. And thankfully, I have a sister who's good at teaching dyslexia and subjects like that. So I learned a lot about early reading. I still was outperforming my teammates, and they have been teaching this stuff for years. And you still get opposition. And you kind of like, man, what the world? So, you know, and it's something I'll speak more about in the coming weeks. So I think it'd be better to say that for then so people can truly understand, because I think it's something that's worth speaking on. I think people really need to understand. And I kind of just go back to what Mr. Gibson was saying. Ain't nobody running me away. I'm committed to what I'm doing. Because my thing is, if there's this much opposition, and then others see this, if it's this much opposition, it must mean I'm on to something. And that's how I look at it. So if any of those little haters, or any of those people that have come against me or saying it, understand that I ain't going anywhere. So, but at the same time, I want to speak on this too. And I don't want to speak ill of white female teachers or anything like this, but I feel like some of them are the biggest culprits. I'm not saying black females and other people don't do anything, but I do feel like in my career, I've been in some bad dynamics where I've been on some teams with a lot of white females who have come against me. I've been told to follow them, but then I woefully outperform them. I can still remember my third year, my first year at the school crying, and I'm just being real. People don't like you speaking about a particular school, anything like this, but I think some of this stuff needs to be said. I can remember we sat in a meeting, we had to do SSI groups, and I remember I got a particular paper where I got all the kids that were projected to fail. And mind you, this is a high performing school, but we in trouble. Only 7% of our kids were passing the benchmarks and stuff, and we're normally a 90% school, so we need to get to that 90%. All the kids that were failing were given to me except for one. And I had to hear someone say, oh, this particular teacher, oh, she got these particular kids, oh, she's good at moving kids. I'm like, is she so good at moving kids, then why does she not have all these kids with reds? That's what I want to know. And then, so I'm like, you're not even telling me like, hey, Mr. Short, you got this, or nothing like this. You're sitting up there trying to tell me that this person, not only are they better at moving kids, but then I have to take this person's resources and teach these kids, but you want me. It's kind of like Bill Parcells said once, you want me to cook the dinner, but you don't want me to buy none of the groceries. It's kind of like one of those type of things. So I have truly dealt, and people don't realize I write reflections every Sunday. I haven't done the last couple of months, but people don't really understand the opposition that I have dealt with. And people don't understand because they see you having all these issues. Oh, you must be doing this, this, and this. And as Mr. Lott said, I'm pretty positive. I love kids. That's all I talk about. But then you deal with all this opposition just because people, and I just say it frankly, they don't want you there. And I think people are afraid. And I just speak more to my personal experience. Everybody has their own. I feel like a person like me is seen as a threat because I feel like I come in, I'm teaching reading, I'm getting great results. So they're going to try to discredit you, say that you're not doing it, even though the parents are like, man, my kid is able to read and they couldn't read at the beginning of the year. Like, I don't care. Well, I just don't think so. But these people are telling you this and they're telling you how awesome this person is, but you still are like, oh, no, I still just don't like you. I just don't think you can teach. What's your proof? What are your numbers? What do you have to back this up?
Also, let me interject this thing too here, Jeremiah. That is one of the reasons that I kind of became such good allies is because I remember going through the same experiences he went through when I first started teaching. And so that made, I knew that he was trying to navigate and figure out where he was going, but nobody was telling him anything. You know, I had been teaching, that's my 10th year, maybe almost 11th year now. And so I remember starting out and then people trying to get in my way and things like that and trying to figure out, and no one was telling me. So I can say I empathize with you in that scenario. Does that make sense?
And I'll
as well as what Mr. Gibson is saying is the pay, as well as making a firm mind that this is what I want to do, and no one can deter me with that.
And I'll tell people, Mr. Lott truly had my back, because I remember, like, when we first started interacting with each other, like, we just started talking. I mean, another black male, so I started talking to him, and he'd be like, man, I don't get it, man. Like, at first he was kind of, I could tell he was a little hesitant, but he was like, man, I don't get it. It's like, it's almost frustrating. Like, I'm hearing all this negative stuff, but all you talk about is all this positive stuff. You all about kids, you go hard, this, and this. It's like, I just don't get it. Like, I don't see it. Like, he basically said, I don't see what they're talking about. And, you know, we end up working together, and we're still friends to this day. And so I was speaking, he's not just saying this, y'all, like he's on his podcast trying to sound supportive. Like, he literally was saying these same things when we worked together. But at the same time, I understand if there's some type of opposition. As another former black male principal told me, he was like, man, if you're under attack, and he's a Christian man, he was like, it's known to me you're doing the right stuff. And oddly enough, one of the people that gave me a hard time told me this my first year. He said, if you all about kids, because it isn't just about the numbers, as Mr. Gibson can attest to, the kids love me. White, black, I work with a range of kids. All of them love me all the same. I mean, it ain't like white kids, just black kids. It's all around. They're like, man, Mr. Short, you know, I'm hearing stories that kids that didn't even want to go to school the previous year, now they love going to school. You know, administrators know this stuff because people tell them, and they still like, oh, I don't like him. I'm like, why? And you can't even understand why. So you're trying to navigate it. And then, you know, you hear people, even sometimes people that are related to you, tell you stuff like, oh, you have these issues. And I'm like, it's not having issues. It's more, they have issues with me. It's not the other way around. Or it's like, you can't get along with people. That's not the case. So, and it adds to the frustration. So I don't want to make this a podcast about me, but I'll just say, just to kind of end, I really think the reason that there aren't more of us, because they really don't want us in education, as Mr. Lott saying they don't like us. They don't really want us, because I think the power of one of us coming through, whether it's pedagogical or any type of way, and getting true power and trying to evoke change, I feel like then you're going to have change for all kids, not just the ones that look a certain way. And people don't want that. They'll say they do, but in reality, their actions suggest that they don't.
Yeah, we see the evidence of that with Barack, right? You know, the first anything, right? So
exactly.
And of course, and it speaks to so many different arenas. Because I think, like, people, I remember there's a line from this movie Menace to Society. They were saying that character O-Dog was America's worst nightmare, and I kind of end on this. They said O-Dog was America's worst nightmare. He's young, black, and just don't give a bleep. And I reversed that once. I was like, I don't think that's the case. They want us to be that way. They want you to be the one that go out there and just don't care. And when you're young, black, or just black in general, and you do care, and you do want to make change, that scares people. And I think that's why they truly don't want us, because, like, we scare people. Just somebody, and I can speak even to my case, I think, like, that really scares people that do go so hard. And they truly know, because people don't understand the extremity. I've never been too vivid about what people have done. The extremity of what some people have done to try to just flat destroy me. And I'm not even exaggerating. That's literally what has happened. But I still remain resolute in the process. So, and I want to tell those people that if they're listening, I'm sure they're looking for little details or something to hate on, I'm not going anywhere. So it just 10 years from now, you're like, man, I didn't think he'd still be around. I'm still going to be there looking dead in your face. So just remember that. I'll say that. So for any of those people that want to get of us young black males, like the men that are on this podcast, we're not going anywhere, and we're gonna be here. So you're not gonna get rid of us. So yeah, I won't say black power or anything like that. I wanna thank the guys for being on. And, you know, of course, I got to go through the spiel. I'm not on Instagram yet or anything like that, but this will be up on YouTube on Wednesday. We're recording this on a Sunday. So just subscribe to YouTube, you know, like the Facebook page. And I feel like I'm gonna come with a lot more pedagogical stuff from people from multiple races and things like that from a diverse viewpoint. But at the same time, I thought it was important for us really to kind of speak to this, because this is an important topic that a lot of people aren't really talking about the way that they should. So I want to thank, you know, Mr. Gibson, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Reece, and Mr. Lott for being on this. And I hope this conversation really helps a lot of people. And I hope there's a lot of comments and we can have further dialogue after this. So I just want to thank y'all guys, and I guess I'll sign out. I hadn't come up with a
Thank
good
you,
salutation yet, so I just say what I always say to my kids: be phenomenal. See y'all guys later. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Hey, no
Thank
doubt.
you.
Hey, thank you.
No doubt. Appreciate it. Pleasure
See y'all
meeting
later.
you, brothers.
All right,
Yes,
Bye-bye.
too much. We
Yeah.
all need to go do something. It's awesome, man. Good to
All
see
right. All right. So, hey, Chris, I think you got to sign out because technically you're the host, I think. Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna sign out. Let me call my wife because she been calling the whole time.
All right. Cool. All right.
All
See you
right.
later.
All right, fellas.
Later.
All right.